Hello, and it's Ray Hiltz here, and welcome to episode 9 of the Ray2Go show. Today, we're going to be talking about giving it away for free. What do you do when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, can we do lunch? I would love to pick your brain," and or how many of your potential clients have been freely availing themselves of the milk and not buying the cow? So our guest today, our panelist, BL and Jess and Scott, we'll be delving into how do you deal with people who ask you for advice for free. And that's our show today. So we're going to start. I'm going to say hi to BL, and BL can say a few words. BL, how are you today?
Good morning. Oh, it's rainy and gray here in New York City and cold, and the dog won't poop because it's raining. But but I'm fine, and oh my God, I've been asked to give it away for free for my whole career. And at the beginning, I used to. So when we get into the show, I'll talk about what I do now.
And just to be clear, if you just tuned in, we're talking about marketing advice when she says she's been giving it away for free.
Not the cow or the milk cow.
Jess, how are you, Jess?
Well, I'm not as good as BL because I keep getting told over and over again that my plant's too small. So I'm thinking the plant's going to go until I actually have this one grows or a large plant comes. That's okay. Well, and it's also, do you give it away for free when you don't know anything, or do you give it away for free when you know everything? And that's kind of an interesting part of this conversation, too, that I'm curious to explore along with everything else that's planned.
Yeah, that should be very interesting. And Jess, it really isn't all about the size of your plant. Okay, just remember. Scotty.
Actually it is.
I'm sorry, but size does matter.
Scott.
There are just so many double entendres that are going on at the beginning of the show. I can hardly wait to find out what happens in the middle and the end. I mean, I've already discarded 2 or 3 because this is PG and not,
Who says it's PG? I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead. Anyway, how are you doing?
Anyway.
How are things?
Well, you see, it's all in your attitude because it's cloudy and rainy in Seattle, and I couldn't be happier. So it's just a.
You don't like that.
That's a normal day, right?
He gets very suspicious if the sun comes out, and he gets very uncomfortable.
Yeah, I have to close
the blinds. Okay,
anyway.
Scott. Just to let you know that it's very sunny here today. It's a beautiful fall day. It's crisp, but it's sunny. It's very nice. So on with the show. Yes. So this is a problem that I think not only large companies get it, because BL had shared a great post this week about spec work and how agencies are always after spec work, and it's been requests for proposals have been done since I guess the beginning. I mean, and is that fair? Is it time up on that? Should we move on to another model? And then, but also self-employed people or small companies who are always asked for a sample, time to have lunch and pick out your brain and all that, and it's difficult because time is money, and we love what we do, and I'll speak for myself. I mean, I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do, and I'm really interested in the subject. So it's not hard for me to talk about it. So it doesn't take a lot for someone to convince me to talk about marketing, but when you get specific and people are asking to pick your brain about tips on how to do a specific strategy or help a specific business, then I feel like I'm uncomfortable because depending on who's asking, it's difficult to say no without me feeling like I'm being a bit of a dick. So I want to open up and say, basically, what kinds of free advice are there? What kind of examples do you have, guys, of people asking for free advice, and do they differ in the type of industry that you're in? And we're talking service industry here, primarily marketing. So I'll start with Jess. Jess, you have to unmute.
Yes, I have to unmute. And the first thing I've got to say is when I think about free, giving something away for free, every single time somebody talks to me and I have an idea, I will give it to them, whether it helps their project or their business, and that is a freebie that people will pay good money to work with me on a regular basis. So just in conversation, I think having those little tidbits allows people to recognize what's going on and how my brain works, and this would be true for anybody. How does the brain work that you're talking to, and when will that person actually fit into a project that would be going on. So it's a big part of establishing that authority and just being willing to give. I mean, I'm not going to hold back an idea when it comes out because that's the right time and the right place for that idea to appear. Now, I also think that there are a lot of people who do a lot of talking and they don't know a lot. And sometimes, can you see my little guy? I decided he needed to come into the conversation. Sometimes people pull out their unicorn magic and they're not really unicorns, and that's a really big problem. And there's another phrase, gummy bear, that I was looking at names. A guy named Gerald Dubose and Fred Aubin talked to me about on a blab one time where we were talking about best next steps and some things like that, and I thought, you know, all right, so when somebody gives something away for free, I now have a little bit of my first reaction is I've got to look at that closer because they're probably full of hot air.
Oh, interesting. Before I jump over, because I'm going to ask BL, because BL's worked with agencies, and I haven't really worked in an agency before, and they get a lot of requests for spec work. And spec work, I mean, it's any kind of creative work rendered and submitted either partial or completed by designers to prospective clients before taking steps to secure both their work and equitable fees. Now, I know a lot of designers, a lot of graphic designers get hit for this. And then the other thing is brain picking, which is what I tend to come across all the time. So BL, maybe can you explain maybe more about how the spec work thing works?
Yeah, I worked for the biggest PR firm on the planet, which is Burson Marsteller, and they get RFPs all the time. They seek them out, and they will put a team of 20 people on an RFP. But what they will also do is have brainstorming sessions with people who know nothing whatsoever about the topic, coming up with ideas that have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with a solution. And then they will recycle old ideas. It's not just them. Every big agency works that way. But they will put a lot of time and effort over a period of time. They'll make videos. They'll do all kinds of things because they have money in their budget for new business. I owned a small PR firm that had 6 employees and that I grew into one of the 100 top independent PR firms in the U.S. We were asked for proposals all the time. And at the beginning, we would do them. And we would send them over by messenger. And then we would call. And guess what? They wouldn't take our call. So then we got smarter. And then we would say, well, we have to come to a meeting with you to discuss the proposal, and we would not put the price in because all they would look at, therefore, would be the price. Yes. And you would have to find out how much we were going to charge, you would at least have to listen to us. And guess what? In the 30 years that I've been in business, I have never been hired on the basis of a proposal. Either people want to work with me or they don't, and the people who want to work with me generally hire me in our first conversation.
That's awesome. See, I have a 50-50 response to proposals, but what I just heard you describe was a really big efficiency improvement, BL, in the sense that, you know, you get out there and you try things, and if they don't work, what are you going to do? And what I find are the people who end up liking my proposal they're the ones that understand each of the hooks, and I build hooks in through my proposal in terms of, okay, well, here's the opportunity, but to really get into specifics, you're going to meet with me, just like what you do. And that's what we do all the way around. And I also use that as the basis for a follow-up email campaign, if you will, to just say, hey, have you thought about this? Or I know you had asked me about this. What did you decide to do? So that
I understand that, and I'm glad you get 50-50, but at this point I say, these are the services I provide, this is the work that I have. If you'd like to speak to some of my clients, I'll be glad to connect you, and if you want me to write you a program, I will charge you for that. The first thing I will do when you hire me is write you a program.
Okay,
so just don't do that anymore.
You make a good point, because I don't write a full program. My proposal is not a full program. People pay good money for those, just like you. Right. But I do have, I do give away free consultations. I have a small amount of time to help people find their next step. Find their next step, and off they go.
Right.
Let's hold on to that free consultation, because I see this posted quite often with freelancers, especially, on whether they should or not. And there's a whole dialogue. But I want to highlight Andrew. He said, first of all, his rates for brain picking. Basically, his office visit is $100 an hour. Picking my brains over lunch is $250. And then I'm going to jump over here to Bill Graham, who said he agrees. He figures often people figure that because your lunch hour is regarded as time away from your work, that your knowledge should be free. And he goes on to say that they're depriving you of that break that we need. But that's the whole point here is that people think because that we're self-employed and we work and we're in control of our own hours, that those hours just seem to be, I don't know, free, less expensive, less worthy, or whatever. And I find that, I find that when I worked in theater, and I find that when I'm working now, is that they have this assumption, because you don't go to an office, you don't have to check in under someone else's responsibility, that, yeah, you should be able to join me for lunch, and I should be able to bring, pick your brains. I'm doing you a favor because you love what you're doing, right?
Well, you can buy me lunch. That doesn't mean I'm going to give you ideas.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the contract, though. That's a contract.
No, actually, it's only a contract if specific words were used and those specific words were accepted. If somebody wants to take me to lunch and I ask what it's about, and if they want to pick my brain, we have a different conversation than somebody who just says, I want to go to lunch, and it comes up at lunch because sometimes they kind of sneak it in there. Hey, it's good to see you. We haven't we haven't seen each other in a while, and then all of a sudden they want help with a problem when you're at lunch. So how would you, it's really interesting. You don't always know until you're in the middle of it.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Sure, yeah, I just want to go to, because we haven't heard from Scott. Scott, what's your experience?
Well, I'm going to add a few more pieces to the discussion, and one of them is that you give something away because of client education. For example, it might be that people would love to have what you have to offer, it's just that they don't realize it yet. If they only knew what magic there is in all of this, then the world would be flocking to my door. And one of the good examples of this is on the internet. There's a whole new way of interacting with potential clients, and video is a very potent way of doing this, and yet videos that are an hour long are less valuable sometimes than are 2 or 3 minutes. So therefore the Scott treatment is born, which is taking great content and down to bite sizes that everyone wants. But if people don't realize the power and the value of these golden nuggets or these snippets, then someone like me can go out and create free golden nuggets. Here is on a silver platter a golden nugget. But I will tell you this, if you give it, it's got to be a good match. If you give it away to someone too soon, then you can just, kiss them goodbye in terms of being a good client, because they will associate value with price. And if the price was zero, then they'll either think that the value is zero, or at least they shouldn't have to pay for it. So there are all sorts of reasons for giving things away. It can be because you want to make a name for yourself. It can be because you want to perfect your craft. I'm fond of saying that, when you're at the very beginning, you can give away things for empire building, and, at the beginning of your career, and at the end of your career, you give away things for a legacy. But in the middle, you charge like heck.
You're shaking your head. So.
Because, Scott, you have a rich array of the moments that you've already done. Why would you do a free one for somebody? They can look at your work that you've done. That's why I have a portfolio. Here's what I've done. And plus the fact that I've written more than 8,000 blog posts. If you want to know what I think, you can read my blog. You can read my posts in Ad Age. You can read my posts. You can look at my videos. You can watch my show. You do not need to have my consultation for nothing.
That's interesting, and that's one of the, I think, strategies you can use to deflect those things and say, listen, if you do want to find it, here's my website. I have a number of articles on this subject. Check it out. I'm going to bring up Christine has a good point. I mean, as I said, she's a graphic designer, and they get hit all the time for stuff. And she, as you said, BL, she uses her portfolio for spec work, the stuff that she's already done. And that's interesting that people don't pick up on that, and then why they wouldn't go there in the first place. I've talked to someone who asked me to pick my brain about something, and I said, and he said, well, what do you do? and I said, have you Googled me?
Yes, up there. But, I worked for a design firm. I worked for a very major design firm that at that time was part of Reuter and Finn, which is still the largest independent PR firm on the planet. And we would fill a room with speculative work. And the reason that we would do that is because we were part of a bigger firm that had a budget for that kind of spec work on new business. There were people whose whole role was to get new business. So a big agency can do that. A small one, look at my portfolio.
I heard you say something really neat, BL, and this is another, it seems efficiency is coming up for me a lot in this conversation, because you're using your content strategy to let people get to know you and see your work and provide links to portfolios or past work or whatever the case may be, which frees up the time it would take to create that in the first place. Basically, you're just using your existing work like the agencies are using for new ideas. And I think both of those are valid. And I also think, we come up with ideas that we never give to a client. We could put those around fake clients and have an idea gallery as well. And it could be content for other things, whether it be for a show or for a blog post or something else. So,
but the most recent time that I was asked to do something for nothing was about a month ago, and I said, well, I don't really do that, and they were like, well, do you want the job? So I actually did some spec work, and I said, you should look at this, and you should look at that, and you should look at that, and you should look at that, and they didn't hire me.
Interesting.
I'm never doing that again.
Scott,
I also don't.
Here's a question.
Okay, Scott, go ahead.
And that is, at what point is it that you're paying your dues, and at what point are you being played for a sucker?
I was played for a sucker. I'm not paying my dues anymore.
Yeah, I think looking at, well, that's an interesting, the whole paying the dues thing. But I want to get back to the question about when, because you had broached this. When do you draw the line between providing free content to establish your expertise, and then basically just sledding yourself away?
Well, you put out wonderful content every week, Ray. Your newsletter, Dave and I do our show. You do this show. We are putting out content. We are establishing our expertise. And, most work really does come through referrals, does it not? And, when that happens, either people are going to hire you or they're not. I have really never had anybody who came to me via a referral ask me for a proposal. Have you?
You know what? I have, but it wasn't a traditional proposal, and I didn't treat it like that. When I get people that come to me by referral, they have an affinity or an opening. I have an opening with them because of somebody else's trust and belief in me and the fact they've seen my work. So what I end up doing is I will have a 10-minute conversation with them, and I actually go to my portfolio and I pull things together, and I say, well, this is the piece of my portfolio that I think you should look at because it is in line with what you want. So what am I doing? I'm continuing the dialogue, but it's no extra work because I've got all this in my brain, and if I'm efficient about how I organize all of those things, it only takes a couple of minutes to pull that to support the conversation. And because I'll tell you what, about half the time when I get referrals, people come talk to me, but they don't actually know what I do. They kind of know what I did for their contact or their friend, but they don't really. And so they don't understand what I did for the person who referred them to me, how I can actually help them. And so it goes back to something that Scott said of, a little bit of education. But there's a way to do that education without expending work hours or creating work product.
But, on the other hand, if I can add to this, I'm working with a new client now, and I charged a setup fee. He has already made a commitment. I charged this. We're doing videos. I charged a setup fee. Trust me when I tell you, I've put a lot more time into the setup fee than I'm being paid for. But we have a commitment to a longer-term relationship. So once you hire me, I'm not looking so much at the clock as I am before. And, I think the line that comes from Ronnie Bincer is still the best one there is. I'd love to give you some free advice, but it wouldn't be fair to my paying clients. You know, I mean, the video that precipitated this show. They asked an architect, you know, would you give me designs on spec? And she just laughed and said, "Are you kidding?" They asked a restaurant, "Can I have a free meal?" He said, "Get out of my restaurant." You know, I mean, you would not, you know, you just would not ask other people to do that. And they're like, "What, are you kidding?" Like he tells a trainer, you know, "I want you to show me everything you're going to teach me." And he says, "What? Why would I do that?" I mean, so.
And then it becomes his. Then it becomes his property.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And then I own it. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And how many times does that happen to you? You give away ideas, and funnily enough, you see them in effect, but not by you.
Yeah. Maybe one of the ways.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, excuse me. Maybe one of the ways to think about it also is where in the sales funnel are you? Because if you're at the very top, you're giving it away, but you're not giving it away to a potential client. You're giving it away to the world. You're broadcasting it, and the reason why you're doing that is that you want attention. So you're getting paid, but you're paid in getting attention, and then you start to establish a relationship with someone. So I've got your attention, Ray. Then what do? I give you some more information because I want to pique your interest. So there's still value for value because you're giving me your interest. You're giving me your email address as an example, and that's golden. That inbox of yours is sacred. You're allowing me to be on sacred ground with you. And then as you go down further, things got to get a little more concrete to the end, where I'm going to give you, something of value, and you're going to give me coin.
Yeah, but we're talking, I think, even before we talk about the funnel. I know we're talking about people who are approaching even before necessary that they're on the top or middle of that funnel. And I want to bring up, Christine says that we determine our worth by the terms we set and the terms we accept, and that's true. But we may think we were worth so much. The problem is, the people that we talk to, do they see us the same way? And then how do you convey what you feel you're worth to someone? And I have the opposite problem sometimes. Sometimes I'll approach a new client and they don't want to hear anything else. They just want to know how much is it, right?
I never.
They don't want the interview. They don't want I'm stuck. I'm not stuck.
The answer to that is, have you given consideration to your budget, and have you done your due diligence? And if you haven't, perhaps you want to take a look at what's out there and talk to some other people, and then let's have this conversation. I mean, what's it cost? You want my hourly rate? I'll give it to you, but we're not going to work on an hourly basis.
Because there's no contact.
So, if you want to work hourly, you'll pay me a whole lot more money than if we do a project together.
Everybody has a budget. They just don't want to tell it to you. And guess what else I've learned in 30 years? If they won't tell you their budget, they're not going to become your client.
Nice.
Period.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and I always love the look I get when I ask if they have a marketing plan.
Well, you bring up a good point, because people kind of look at you with this blank face, and it goes back to, and I ask different questions than BL does, because if somebody wants a cost, I'll be like, well, I need to see your plan around this project before I can even have any idea, and it would be better if you could, and then I'm going to have a lot of questions.
Exactly. You don't just come to me and ask, what does it cost? I'm not selling you a banana.
Yeah, exactly. We agree on what a banana looks like and the shape is, and maybe even what the cost should be. I don't know. There might be some haggling for said banana, especially if I have a hungry monkey. But
yeah, you alluded to the fact that we do put out an awful lot of content. I mean, we do this show. You have a show. I put out a newsletter. I put out blog posts. You put out, and Jess and Scott as well. But I'm wondering if the problem is, we know how much time we spend on that, and I think we put out quality stuff. There's so much stuff out there. People don't look at that. And because I'll have to say you're right. Most of your business comes from referrals, but I have to say my personal experience is that very little of my business has come from any of that content that I had put out. I don't get a call after I do a show and say, that was a really interesting show. I would like to learn more about that. Let's talk.
My experience is different. I have gotten quite a lot of business as a result of content and speaking, and big companies too. So
yeah, well, I think, and you have a huge CV, much more impressive than mine, and maybe that's part of the reason.
I think you're pretty impressive, Ray.
Oh,
Yeah, we all believe that. Right. And by doing this, you become a player. You know, if we didn't do what we did,
I've been called a player before, Scott. I don't know if I appreciate it.
Come on, bring out the player.
I'm too old to be a player. I laid my cards out a long time ago. Go ahead. Go ahead, Scotty. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm not sure how to proceed now.
You might just want to start over.
By virtue of us doing what we're doing, you know, we are in the game. Does that work better?
Yeah, sure.
And if we're not in the game, it's, you know, then we're irrelevant. So even though there might not be a solid line or even a dotted line, there is more of an aura and persona, and also by virtue of doing what we're doing, it's personal growth and professional in-service training, and we're keeping up to date. And quite frankly, we're staying young, because all of what we're doing is kind of like at the leading edge, you know?
That's true, but you know what? I also will have to say that people don't really want to pay for marketing. They don't understand. Ray's talked about this. They really don't understand what we do. So, you know, in my opinion, the only thing you can really show them is the results that you've gotten for other people. But I think you said the most important thing in this half hour, Jess, which is I need to see your plan. I need to see how you're approaching this, and I can then give you a price for what it is you want to accomplish after you tell me the time frame and the resources that you have to get there.
Yep.
That's the answer.
Very well. Yep. Very well said. Before we end the show, in the last 4 minutes or so, I'd like to ask your advice. What would you tell people when they're faced with this situation, when someone wants to invite them to lunch, pick their brains, or anything like that? What advice would you give them? Okay, I'll give you. I'll seed it, because there's an interesting article by John Whatnot, I think his name is Voigtnot. He said one thing you can do, and we talked about this, is refer them to additional resources that you've done in the past, if it's specific to that. And the other thing, perhaps, is redirect to provide links to articles, books, and videos, and that kind of thing. So what are other things you could do to maybe avoid being stuck in an hour-and-a-half meeting being picked at?
Well, one of the things that I do is I say, listen, let's do a video call. You know, and that way you can say, sorry, I have another meeting, I have to go. I mean, lunch is a pretty special thing. If I have to really want your business before I'm going to have lunch with you, or coffee, or, you know, leave my dog and go somewhere. I mean, you know, and a lot of people will ask you, and you don't have to always say yes.
Yeah, no, and it's hard to say no, right?
Sure is.
Adrian Graham who, wrote an article about my brain's too expensive to pick. My brain costs money to maintain. There's training classes to attend, reading, I have to buy books, gaining certifications, cost of membership so I can network, attend conferences, et cetera, et cetera. I have to protect my investment. How fair is it to me to give away all that knowledge I have acquired that I use to make my living, pay my bills, and eat? You know, I mean, it is an investment, right? I mean, we've invested in the knowledge that we have. It's just something that we just don't share because we were born with this knowledge.
Duh, you go into debt to go to college. No, just kidding. That's a whole other conversation.
Well, you know, also,
sorry.
It depends on how many bites of an apple that you want to give to someone as well. If they want to have some free advice, I mean, they're getting to know you, you're getting to know them. There's a lot of information that's exchanged the first time that you're talking with someone who's a stranger. But if you've got someone on the second and third and fifth, you know, at a certain point, that teeter-totter is going to go the other direction, and it's not shame on them, it's shame on you.
Exactly.
Well, it's like, you know, it's the proverbial doctor at a party, right? Someone will approach the doctor and ask them their opinion on something, and it's okay to ask an opinion on something, but you're in a party. He can't give you an examination, and he's not going to perform surgery on you on the dining room table. I mean, there's time and place for everything. So I don't mind giving advice if it's something that's casual, and I can say, you know, what platform do I like personally, or, you know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
That's fine. But when we're talking strategy and how to do something that's custom built for your business, that's where the line is drawn.
But, you know, the doctor's going to say no. You know, he'll give you some general idea. He's going to say, I'd have to see you, I'd have to have tests, I'd have to whatever. You know, he's not going to pop your boil at a party, you know?
I have that's a great article because last time we did this, we did a show last February 2014 called "If I Give It Away, Does That Make Me Cheap?" And one of our fans, one of our followers, our friends, Jimmy Lanley, said basically, unless you're a surgeon, you cannot pick my brain. But I also like Stefan Hovnavian's reply saying, if I ever follow up with the phrase, let's talk about it so I can get you a quote, then you know your time's up.
And I like that, and that's true because there is a level. And so, and by the way, Geek Speak Guides, my friend Susan, she actually did a rant yesterday about when to say no and how to say no. And I know my personal thing is when you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. And if you feel used or deprived or any icky feeling around saying yes, it's the time to say no. And draw that line in the sand and don't cross it. Our boundaries really matter, and this is a really good time to recognize, oh, where is my boundary?
Yeah, go with your instinct, go with your feeling, as it were. So thanks very much, guys. We're at the end of the half hour already. We're not done quite yet. This part's done, but join us. Scott's our co-chair this week, right, Scott? So Scott and I are going to be co-chairing the post-show Blab over at blab.im, Ray Hiltz. And I hope you can join us because you can continue the conversation and jump in and give us your thoughts on that. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week. And everybody remember tomorrow. In the States, it's Veterans Day, and here in Canada, it's Remembrance Day. Take care. Bye-bye.